The AI saw something human eyes missed for 2,000 years. For centuries, people stared at the Shroud of Turin, studied it, photographed it, analyzed every fiber. But they were looking with human limitations, human eyes, human assumptions, human technology. Then researchers fed high-resolution images into advanced AI systems, machine learning algorithms designed to detect patterns invisible to human perception, neural networks trained on thousands of forensic images, medical scans, and archaeological data. And the AI found something that shouldn't be there: three-dimensional information encoded in a two-dimensional cloth. Spatial data that would require technology we don't possess even today. Details in the image that correspond perfectly to crucifixion wounds described in the Gospels, but include medical accuracy unknown until modern forensic pathology. We're not talking about subjective interpretation. We're talking about mathematical patterns, measurable data, verifiable information that artificial intelligence detected because it wasn't limited by human expectations or religious bias. The 1988 carbon dating claimed the shroud was medieval. Case closed, skeptics said, proven fake, but that carbon test has been systematically dismantled. Contamination, sample location, statistical errors, and now AI analysis reveals details a medieval forger couldn't possibly have known or created. Blood flow patterns matching actual crucifixion physics, scourge marks corresponding to Roman flagrum wounds, pollen from plants that only grow in 1st century Jerusalem, and most explosively, image formation mechanisms that violate known laws of chemistry and physics. Subscribe right now, because what artificial intelligence just discovered in this ancient cloth could be the most significant scientific finding in Christian history. The Shroud of Turin, a 14-foot linen cloth bearing the faint image of a man, front and back, head to head, showing someone who was scourged, crowned with thorns, crucified, and pierced in the side, housed in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy, since 1578, rarely displayed publicly, protected behind bulletproof glass in climate-controlled conditions, insured for impossible amounts, guarded like a nuclear weapon. The Catholic Church doesn't officially declare it authentic. They call it an icon, rather than a relic. But millions believe this cloth wrapped Jesus after the crucifixion, that the image on the fabric is an actual photograph of Christ's resurrection. First documented historical appearance, 1350s in France. A knight named Geoffroy de Charny claimed to possess Christ's burial cloth. The Bishop of Troyes immediately called it a forgery. But the shroud survived, passed through noble families, and eventually ended up in Turin. Here's what makes it unique. The image isn't painted, it's not printed, it's not scorched. Chemical analysis shows no pigments, dyes, or artistic materials. The image exists only on the uppermost surface fibers of the cloth, penetrating no deeper than the width of a single fiber. The image is a photographic negative. When photographed in 1898, the negative showed clearer detail than the positive. This was before anyone understood negative photography. A medieval forger would have needed to create a negative image centuries before the concept existed. Three-dimensional information is encoded in the image intensity. Areas closer to the body show darker. Areas farther away show lighter. This creates a 3D effect when analyzed with specialized equipment. No known artistic technique produces this property. And the image formation mechanism, complete mystery. Scientists cannot reproduce it using any known medieval or modern technology. In 1988, the Vatican allowed carbon dating of the shroud. 3 laboratories tested samples: Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona. All concluded 1260 to 1390 AD, medieval origin. Case closed. Skeptics celebrated. The shroud was proven fake, no need for further investigation. Just another religious relic debunked by science. Except the story doesn't end there, because that carbon test has been systematically destroyed by subsequent analysis. First problem: sample location. The tested piece came from the edge of the cloth, the most handled, contaminated, repaired area. Decades of touching, smoke exposure, fire damage, and medieval repairs created a sample unrepresentative of the main cloth. Textile expert Mechthild Fleury-Lemberg examined the shroud and identified the sampled area as containing foreign fibers, medieval cotton threads woven into original linen during repair work. The carbon dating tested the repair, not the original cloth. Second problem: contamination. The shroud survived a fire in 1532. Molten silver dripped onto it. Water was poured on to extinguish flames. Carbon from smoke, bacteria from water exposure, and foreign materials accumulated in the fabric. None of this was accounted for in the 1988 test. Third problem: statistical manipulation. Dr. Raymond Rogers, a chemist from Los Alamos National Laboratory, reviewed the raw data. He discovered the 3 labs' measurements showed statistically impossible variation. The published results were averaged in ways that masked significant discrepancies. Rogers conducted his own analysis on threads from the shroud. He found the sampled area contained vanillin, a compound that disappears from linen over centuries. The main cloth contained no vanillin. His conclusion: the tested sample was much younger than the rest of the cloth. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have since challenged the 1988 dating. New proposals for dating using different methodologies consistently suggest first-century origin. But the 1988 result remains the official date because no new carbon testing has been allowed. The Vatican won't permit another sample. Too controversial, too politically sensitive. So we're stuck with a single, flawed test from 35 years ago that scientists increasingly recognize as fundamentally compromised. This is where artificial intelligence changes everything. Because AI doesn't care about religious debates or scientific egos. It just processes data. Researchers at the University of Padua and multiple international institutions fed ultra-high-resolution shroud images into advanced AI systems. The algorithms were designed to analyze depth information, detect patterns, and reconstruct 3-dimensional data from 2-dimensional images. The results were staggering. The AI confirmed what earlier researchers suspected. The shroud image contains precise 3-dimensional information, not artistic shading, not random variation, mathematically encoded spatial data. The image intensity correlates perfectly with cloth to body distance. Areas where the cloth would have been closer to the body are darker. Areas where the cloth would have been farther away are lighter. This creates a perfect distance map. But here's what AI revealed that humans missed. The encoding is more sophisticated than anyone realized. The AI detected sub-millimeter precision in the distance calculations. Variations too subtle for human perception, but statistically significant when analyzed by machine learning. No artistic technique produces this effect. Painters work in 2 dimensions. Even the most skilled artists can't encode precise 3-dimensional distance data into image intensity with sub-millimeter accuracy. The AI went further. It reconstructed a full 3D model of the body based purely on image intensity data. The model shows anatomically correct human proportions. realistic muscle structure, accurate skeletal positioning, all derived from mathematical relationships in the image. This isn't subjective. This is measurable data processed by algorithms trained on thousands of medical images. The AI has no religious bias. It's simply detecting mathematical patterns that exist in the image, and those patterns shouldn't exist if the shroud is medieval. AI trained on forensic pathology data analyzed the blood patterns on the shroud. The findings are devastating to the forgery theory. The blood flows match actual physics. Gravity, body position, and blood viscosity all correspond to what forensic scientists would expect from a crucified body. Multiple blood flows from the same wounds show position changes consistent with someone being taken down from a cross and laid flat. The wrist wounds show blood flowing at angles, matching arms extended overhead. The flow patterns change when the arms shift position, exactly what would happen when a body is removed from crucifixion and laid horizontally. The side wound shows blood mixed with clear fluid. Medical experts identify this as blood and pleural fluid. What happens when a spear pierces through the chest cavity into the pericardial sac around the heart? John's Gospel specifically mentions blood and water flowing from Jesus' side, a medical detail no one understood until modern pathology. AI analysis detected something human observers missed. The blood has edges too sharp for liquid blood applied to cloth. Liquid blood would soak into linen, creating fuzzy boundaries. The shroud's blood has defined edges consistent with actual wound clotting, then transferring to cloth through contact. Forensic analysis confirms the blood is real human blood. Type AB contains high bilirubin levels indicating severe trauma. Shows signs of blood that was oxygenated, clotted, and then in contact with cloth. The scourge marks number over 100. They show the characteristic dumbbell pattern of a Roman flagrum, a whip with multiple leather strands ending in metal or bone pieces. The marks appear in pairs at angles, consistent with two executioners striking from different sides. A medieval forger would need to know Roman crucifixion techniques lost to history, would need to understand blood flow physics, would need to apply actual human blood with trauma markers, would need to create over 100 anatomically accurate scourge marks, and would need to do all this while creating an image formation mechanism that still baffles scientists today. In the 1970s, Swiss criminologist Dr. Max Frey examined the shroud with microscopic precision. What he found was explosive pollen from plants that don't grow in medieval France or modern Italy. Frey identified pollen from 58 different plant species. Many are native to the Middle East. Several grow only in the Jerusalem area. Some bloom exclusively in March-April, the time of Jesus' crucifixion. Specific species include plants from the Dead Sea region, the Anatolian steppes, and areas around Constantinople. This suggests the shroud's travel route matches historical claims: Jerusalem to Edessa, Edessa to Constantinople, Constantinople to France. Gundelia tournefortii, a thorny plant native to Israel. This species has been proposed as the plant used for Jesus' crown of thorns. Pollen from this plant was found concentrated around the head area of the shroud image. Critics attacked Frey's work. They claimed contamination. They suggested pollen could have been transferred by pilgrims. They argued the samples were compromised. But subsequent botanical analysis confirmed his findings. Independent researchers found the same plant species. AI-assisted microscopic analysis has now verified pollen embedded in the linen fibers themselves, not surface contamination. The pollen tells a story. The shroud wasn't created in medieval France and kept only in Italy. It traveled through the Middle East. It was in Jerusalem. It passed through areas consistent with first-century burial cloth routes. Medieval forgers in France wouldn't have access to pollen from Jerusalem plants. They couldn't have predicted modern botanical analysis. They would have no reason to contaminate their forgery with geographically specific pollen matching the Gospel accounts. Here's the central mystery that AI analysis has made even more puzzling. How was the image formed? Scientists have tried for decades to reproduce the shroud image. Every attempt fails. We can't create an image with the same properties using any known technique, medieval or modern. The image is superficial. It exists only on the top few microfibers of each thread. No penetration into the fiber. No capillary action. No soaking. Just surface discoloration of individual fibers. The image is a scorch, but not from heat. Chemical analysis shows the fibers are dehydrated and oxidized at the molecular level, similar to what happens when organic material is aged accelerated by 1,000 years in seconds. No pigments, no dyes, no artistic materials. Spectroscopic analysis finds only aged linen. The image is literally the linen itself, chemically altered at the surface level. The image doesn't fluoresce. Under ultraviolet light, normal paintings glow. The shroud image doesn't. It's absent of material, a negative image created by oxidation rather than addition of substance. AI analysis has now quantified the precision required to create this image. The algorithms calculate that producing even 1 square inch of image with these properties would require manipulating individual fibers at the molecular level. The entire image would require billions of precision interactions. Researchers have proposed various theories: radiation burst, corona discharge, proton acceleration. Each theory has problems. None can be experimentally verified. None explain all the image properties simultaneously. Dr. Paolo Di Lazzaro at ENEA led experiments using excimer lasers, the most powerful available. They produced superficial yellowing of linen fibers similar to the shroud, but only for tiny areas. Scaling up to full body size would require ultraviolet laser pulses millions of times more powerful than current technology allows. His conclusion: the image formation mechanism is unknown and probably unknowable using current science. In the 1980s, researchers claimed to see impressions of coins over the eyes of the man in the shroud. Ancient burial practice sometimes placed coins on the deceased's eyes to keep them closed. Skeptics dismissed this. Pareidolia, they said, seeing patterns in random noise. Wishful thinking by believers desperate for evidence. Then I trained in numismatic analysis, examined high-resolution images. The machine learning system was designed to detect coin features, inscriptions, images, wear patterns. It had no information about the shroud controversy. The AI detected circular patterns over the eye regions matching the size and shape of ancient coins. More significantly, it identified letter patterns consistent with Greek inscriptions used on coins minted by Pontius Pilate between 29 and 32 AD. These coins were minted for only 3 years, the exact period of Jesus' crucifixion. Human eyes can barely see these patterns. The coin impressions are faint, degraded, and obscured by the image. But eye pattern recognition, trained on thousands of ancient coins, identified them with statistical confidence. Critics remain skeptical. They argue the AI is detecting random patterns. But the statistical probability of finding letter sequences matching specific first-century coins in positions corresponding to ancient burial practices is astronomically low. If the impressions are real, There's another impossibility for medieval forgery. A forger would need access to rare pilot coins, would need to understand first-century Jewish burial customs, and would need to create impressions so subtle they wouldn't be detected for 600 years after the forgery was supposedly created. In 2009, researchers using high-resolution photography detected faint writing on the shroud, Greek and Latin letters, words and fragments, some visible only under specific lighting conditions. Dr. Barbara Frail, a paleographer at the Vatican Secret Archives, analyzed the text. She identified Greek, Latin, and possibly Hebrew inscriptions. The text appears to include name fragments, possibly Jesus Nazarene, or similar identifications. Ancient burial practice included tags or inscriptions identifying the deceased. Roman law required bodies be identified. This text could represent such documentation. AI trained on ancient manuscripts and paleography has now analyzed these inscriptions with far greater precision than human researchers. The machine learning system compared letter forms to thousands of first-century examples. Results suggest the script style matches first-century Jerusalem usage. The letter forms show characteristics inconsistent with medieval Latin or Greek, but consistent with ancient manuscripts. The AI also detected text humans couldn't see. Under certain digital processing, additional letter fragments emerge. The algorithms identified patterns consistent with written characters that human eyes cannot distinguish from background noise. Whether these inscriptions are authentic or artifacts of processing remains debated, but if real, they present another challenge to forgery theory. Medieval forgers wouldn't create microscopic text that wouldn't be visible for centuries, and they certainly wouldn't use first-century paleographic forms unknown until modern archaeological discoveries. Chemical analysis of the shroud's bloodstains reveals properties that strengthen authenticity claims and challenge forgery theories. The blood contains high levels of creatinine and ferritin. These compounds increase dramatically in blood of torture victims. Extreme trauma causes muscle and organ breakdown, releasing these chemicals. The blood on the shroud shows precisely this chemical signature. No medieval forger would know this. Creatinine and ferritin weren't discovered until the 20th century. Creating fake blood with these trauma markers would be impossible without modern biochemistry knowledge. The blood shows signs of separation into clot and serum. Real blood does this. Artistic blood simulation wouldn't. The stains show the characteristic patterns of actual blood transfer from wounds to cloth. Bilirubin levels are elevated. Bilirubin increases after severe trauma and torture. It gives the blood a reddish-orange tint even when ancient. The shroud blood maintains this coloration despite being centuries old. AI analysis of blood pattern characteristics trained on forensic databases confirms the patterns match real trauma wounds rather than artistic application. The distribution, concentration gradients, and edge definitions all correspond to actual blood contact rather than painting or simulation. Most remarkably, the blood remains visible while the body image is faint. This suggests the blood was on the cloth before the image formed. The image formation mechanism didn't affect the blood stains. This sequence matters. It means whoever or whatever created the image did so after blood was already present. The image formed around pre-existing blood stains. A forger would likely add blood after creating the image, but the shroud shows the opposite. Blood first, image formation second. This sequence makes sense only if this truly is a burial cloth. With all this evidence, why does mainstream science still reject or ignore the shroud? 3 reasons. None have to do with evidence quality. First, institutional bias. The 1988 carbon dating created scientific consensus. Overturning that consensus would embarrass prestigious institutions. Oxford, Arizona, and Zurich laboratories staked their reputations on those results. Admitting fundamental errors damages credibility. Academic careers depend on maintaining orthodox positions. Scientists who seriously investigate the shroud face professional ridicule. Funding disappears. Publications get rejected. Tenure becomes impossible. Dr. Raymond Rogers published peer-reviewed papers challenging the carbon dating in respected chemistry journals. He was attacked personally despite his impeccable credentials. His work was dismissed not on scientific grounds, but because it contradicted established narrative. Second, religious implications. If the shroud is authentic, it provides physical evidence for the resurrection, material proof of a miraculous event. That threatens naturalistic worldviews, foundational to modern science. Scientists operate under methodological naturalism, the assumption that only natural processes exist. Allowing supernatural explanations would undermine this framework, so evidence must be rejected regardless of strength, because accepting it would violate philosophical commitments. Third, the impossibility factor. The shroud's properties are impossible to explain. The image formation mechanism violates known science. When faced with data that seems impossible, scientists prefer to assume error or fraud rather than accept the unexplainable. But this isn't science. This is ideology protecting itself. Real science follows evidence wherever it leads. When multiple independent lines of evidence point the same direction, honest researchers investigate rather than dismiss. The shroud evidence is strong. OI analysis adds mathematical rigor. Forensic data keeps accumulating. Chemical analysis reveals impossibilities for medieval forgery, but institutional inertia prevents honest re-evaluation. So what has artificial intelligence revealed? What can we conclude from machine learning analysis unconstrained by human bias? The shroud contains three-dimensional information encoded with mathematical precision. AI algorithms trained on spatial data detect patterns that shouldn't exist in medieval artwork. Blood patterns match crucifixion physics, verified by forensic science. AI trained on trauma analysis confirms the wounds correspond to gospel accounts with medical accuracy. Pollen evidence places the cloth in 1st century Jerusalem. Botanical analysis verified by AI microscopy identifies plant species from the exact time and place of Jesus' execution. The image formation mechanism remains unexplained by current science. No known technique, medieval or modern, can reproduce the shroud's properties. Microscopic details invisible to human eyes emerge under AI analysis. Coin impressions, textual fragments, and chemical signatures that wouldn't exist in forgery. The carbon dating that declared the shroud medieval has been systematically challenged. New methodologies and contamination analysis suggest 1st century origin. Is this proof of resurrection? Science can't answer that. Miracles, by definition, transcend scientific explanation. But AI analysis reveals something extraordinary happened, something that encoded information into cloth, using mechanisms we don't understand. The shroud might be the most analyzed artifact in history, and the more we study it, the more mysterious it becomes. AI hasn't solved the mystery. It's made the mystery more profound. We're left with possibilities. Either this cloth wrapped Jesus and captured an image during resurrection, or an unknown medieval forger possessed knowledge and technology exceeding modern capabilities. One requires accepting a miracle. The other requires accepting impossibility. Choose your impossibility carefully. Subscribe for more investigations where AI and science meet biblical archaeology. Share this with everyone who thinks the shroud has been debunked. Hit that like button if you believe artificial intelligence just found evidence mainstream science refuses to acknowledge. The AI has spoken. The patterns are there. The evidence is mounting. The only question is, are we ready to accept what it means?